Um, it is healing from divorce tonight. I'm talking about in this part 7. I'm Onjeinika Richardson. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. And if you have missed any of the lives where I've been dealing with this topic of healing from divorce, then please go back and watch them. I've talked about everything from the whole healing process, which is acceptance, grief, forgiveness, renewal, all the way through the 10 things you should do when you are blindsided by a divorce. I talked about closure, how you can provide the closure for yourself, even if you don't have that from your spouse or ex-spouse. I talked about how to deal with the kids, how to talk to them. And last week I covered, um, what did I cover? Last week I covered when God is in the middle of it, when, sometimes it doesn't look like you thought it would, and it doesn't work out like you thought it would, because obviously you're headed towards divorce, but God has done some things on your behalf. He has seen you through, and how to look at that differently, how to shift your perspective. And so tonight I want to talk about managing grief. I knew that grief was a heavy topic, and I knew that I would need to give it its own time slot. And so that's what I'm doing tonight. So thank you for joining me. And so I mentioned the process of healing, and this is a healing process that I use in my book Unmothered, where I'm talking about healing from narcissistic parent abuse. And so it's 4 steps, and in the book it's broken down into more parts, but overall it's 4 steps, and those steps are acceptance, grief, forgiveness, and renewal. And so before we talk about grief tonight, I'm going to read a little bit from my book, just so that you can get an idea of how to look at grief and what it means. So this is in part 2 of my book, and it's called Healing. And I mentioned that healing is a 2-part process. It's part grief and forgiveness, where those that's the crux of healing. It fits into that 4-part framework I just talked about. And so in the book I say grief is a normal, natural response to loss, and if we allow it, it can be a catalyst to healing. If the loss is traumatic, then grief can help us air out those emotions that might otherwise get trapped inside. Grief is a process that can be ongoing, and some say it's the price we pay for love. So that holds true whether you've lost someone that you love, physically, like they're no longer on this earth, they've passed away, or whether you've lost someone, as far as relationship wise, emotionally. And so a lot of people view grief as a process. I'm in that camp. And sometimes, depending on what you read or who you talk to, there can be 5 steps to the grieving process. There can be 7. It just depends. And so the steps can be anything from shock, when you first suffer that loss, shock, denial. There can be anger, bargaining. Eventually, you should get to a progressing stage, but before that, there could be depression. And so it just really depends on who you talk to. But I've seen all kinds of phases like this when going through the grieving process. Because, like I said, I lost my mother, who did have quite a bit of narcissistic traits, which is kind of how I got here to being able to write the book. And so now that I have this healing process, I found it to be very helpful. And this is what I've been using to get through this divorce. And that's why I want to share it with you. But focusing on grief and divorce, it is extremely complex. And I say it's complex because whereas like when you typically, if you have lost, something, or even if you've lost someone that you love, like they've passed away, it's more one dimensional sometimes, not always. Like for me, it wasn't. But when you compare those types of things, like loss of a job, yes, there are many parts to it. But when you compare those things to divorce, I feel like divorce has so many different nuances and levels. Like, for example, I call it complex grief because you have to grieve one, like the failed relationship, right? The relationship that you thought you had is gone. You have to grieve your lifestyle. So your current lifestyle might change when you go through divorce. So you have to grieve that. You are a lot of times grieving the loss of your future, like what you thought you were going to be doing. Like for myself, for example, just became an empty nester. And so I thought that that was going to be a really good period in my marriage for connection and for building. And so you have to grieve those losses that are even in the future that haven't happened right yet. And then there's the loss of a parent. One of my lights just went out. There's a loss of, not a parent, I'm sorry, of the person that you thought you were married to. So like their personality um, may not be what you thought it was. You may see the real them, and then that makes it difficult. Um, you may even have to grieve the loss of self. Like I don't know what you went through to try to stay in the marriage. I don't know, how you might have changed. I don't know what ways you tried to handle whatever was going on. But sometimes people suffer a loss of self. That did not happen to me, but I've heard that happens to a lot of people. And the reasons, can be different. And so there's a loss of self sometimes. Sometimes there's the loss of time that people really struggle with because they think about like, well, did I waste my time? Now, for me, I was married almost 25 years, 24 years and 10 months to be exact. And so the thought crossed my mind quite a bit, was this a waste of time? What was going on? And so I get it. So like I said, that's why it's so complex, this type of grieving, because there's so many different aspects of it. And it's not to say that losing someone you love couldn't possibly be this deep. I'm just saying, like with divorce, I think there are different levels. And then sometimes you even grieve for your children and for their loss in that tight knit family that they had in that unit. So there are a lot of different levels to it. And so, as you can imagine, if you have all those different aspects of grief going on, it is hard to process it sometimes. But I'm here to let you know that it's okay. Because one of the things you don't want to do is try to keep it in. And it's easy to say, like just to let it out when, we have work. We have kids to take care of sometimes. We have, things that sometimes we're caring for parents or elderly people in our family. Sometimes we're caring for a sibling or trying to help them with their stuff. And then lo and behold, we're going through. And so I know it sounds like, oh, just let go and let the grief have its way. That's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is to recognize the emotions, to recognize what you're feeling, and allow it. And so it's important to sit with the grief. It's important to give yourself all the time that you need, because everybody doesn't grieve in the same amount of time. Everybody doesn't grieve in the same way. And if you think back over it, it really doesn't matter how long you were married. If it was a union, it was something that you weren't expecting to lose. And so grief again is a loss, and it comes from a loss. And so you're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. Now, as you're grieving, as you're going through, as you're feeling these emotions, be aware of how long it's going on. Because I just want to caution you here. Although depression is a part of grief many times, it's depression that lasts less than 2 weeks. So when you get into depression that lasts like 2 weeks or longer, and it begins affecting your behavior, your life, like you can't get up and go to work, you're not able to do self-care, you don't want to take care of the kids, you don't want to take care of the things that are going on around you, just want to check out. If you notice that that's happening and it's lasting like more than 2 weeks, that's when you need to get some help, because that could be going into like major depressive disorder, and you don't want that to happen. So try to be aware. If you can get help while you're going through grief, it's good. If you have friends that you can talk to, that you can count on, then I encourage you to do that. For me, I also have a therapist, and so I really encourage therapy, because a lot of people have this, therapy still has a stigmatism, and a lot of people have a problem with going to therapy. But therapy is really good if you are a person that can benefit from someone talking to you and helping and listening to you above all, and then helping like give you tools and give you some guidance on how to work through whatever it is you're going through. And so for me, my therapist is always Clutch. And it does make a difference the type of therapist you have, right? Because all therapists aren't created equal. They're not the same. And I don't mean like just that they're good and bad ones. I mean like sometimes you have therapists that like their background is for a certain thing, or they do therapy in a certain way. Like for example, when my daughter was seeing a therapist, she is an artist, and so she really responded to the art therapy much better than just talk therapy alone, like psychotherapy. So like where she could work with her hands and like talk about images and things like that. So it depends on what you need, but I do encourage therapy, and I do encourage you to be able to have someone that you can trust. You know, that if you just need somebody to walk with you or somebody to sit with you, someone who will understand. And you don't want someone that's going to be like trying to get you to worry about the other person, like your ex or your soon to be ex. You don't want to have to deal with that while you're trying to get yourself straightened out. So it's very important that you choose who you're going to talk to, who you're going to have listen to you. Choose wisely, because a lot of times people that aren't going through the divorce, they don't understand what it feels like to be in the middle. And so to be the one, that is separating from their spouse, they don't get that. And so just be careful who it is that you choose to listen to you. Okay, so the next thing I would say is, as you are going through the grieving process, and I'm just looking down here at my notes, um, understand that your kids might see you grieve too, and so I just want you to be aware of how you feel like that might affect them. Do you think that that's okay? Do you want to be somewhat private? And I know it probably depends on their age as well, but just something to think about as you're going through, not to make it hard to let out your emotions, but just so that you're prepared, because you don't know how the children might respond to you going through. Okay. So as you're sitting with the grief and as you're going through it, be careful with what you share. You don't need to share everything with everybody. And so, because you want whoever you talk to be sensitive to your needs, right? And so, try not to use the grief as like, to get people to come to you. If you want to share, be genuine. And I'm not saying that it doesn't hurt. It hurts like hell to have to go through divorce when that's not what you were expecting. It's not an easy thing to do, but be aware, so that you're not just using it to gain attention. And definitely try your best not to use it with your ex, because you might be wanting, pity from them, or wanting a way to get closure or to change their mind. But as you're grieving, can really open you up to more harm. It can make you really vulnerable, especially if that person does not care how you feel. If they don't care that you're crying and you're upset, if they're sticking the knife in and turning it, while you're telling them your heart is broken, then obviously you don't want to continue sharing with them. Okay, so be aware of that, and understand that as you're grieving. When I talked about shifting perspectives last week, this is the reason, because sometimes things hurt us, but it's for our good. We have to go through stuff sometimes that we don't want to go through, and it is difficult, but on the other side of it, it will be for our good. And I know when you're in the middle, you can't always see that, and I understand that. But think about the fact that God may be delivering you out of something that you needed to be aware of. He may be turning the tide and changing things in your favor, because it's something that you need, and you can't see what's coming down the line, but He can. And so, and I talked about this, like I said last week, but be aware of, as you're grieving, the weakness that comes with it. Whereas you might want to do anything to stop that pain. That might make you want to go back to, your ex, or go back to your spouse and say, can we work this out? Even if there has been like verbal abuse or emotional and psychological abuse present. And even for some people, it can be physical abuse. So really, really take time and think about those things. And that's why I'm saying make sure you have a therapist, make sure you have some help, so that you're making good decisions. Because when grief hits, it hits so hard. It hits so hard that your knees buckle. It hits so hard that you're just like, I can't take this pain. And I will do anything to get out of it sometimes. But I encourage you to sit with your feelings, You can journal, you can pray. There's all kinds of things you can do to try to get through it, and understand that it's just going to take time. For some people, like I said, they can move through the grief quickly. For some, they they can't. I still struggle with grief, and I'd expect this. I mean, it's only been a year, not even quite a year since we were separated, and it's only been a few months since our divorce was final. So for me, and the fact that this is not something that I wanted, yes, I still struggle with grief as well. But every day or so, I check in with myself and I can see that I'm making progress. And so I just want you to do the same thing. Understand that having some outlets will help you. It can't always be just somebody to sit down and commiserate with you or listen to you. Try to find some fun things to do too. Like I love dancing and kickboxing for exercise, and I have a bag downstairs, and so I can kick the bag, punch the bag. I can also like put my music on and dance. I love walking. So think about some things that are fun for you. Going to the beach, things that will help you get out of your headspace for a little while, because you don't want to like constantly be sad, because that's how it can lead to depression, and depression is very dangerous. So yes, writing, doing fun activities. Do not engage in negative behavior. I know that sometimes, and I already talked about revenge. And when your heart is broken and you don't want to actually deal with what's going on with the divorce, but just be very careful that in your anger you do not sin. It's not going to help. So like, don't be bricking anybody's cars up and doing things like that. Do your best to keep your activities and your thoughts positive, because you gotta have your affirmations right now. You gotta talk to yourself and say, "This too shall pass." I'm going to be stronger when I get through this. I know what it looks like right now, but it's not going to stay like that. If you need to buy affirmation cards, I actually happen to have some of mine right here. This is a set that I have. They're upside down. I use these, like I can read them on a daily. Like this one right here says, "I trust the timing of my life." And then on the back, it talks all about that. Um, I will stay grounded in gratitude. So I love affirmation cards. And so you can use those to help yourself. But understand that it's okay. It's okay to let it out. It's okay to cry. It's okay to cry about it. It's a painful thing. Just be aware of how long you're staying down and if it's affecting your functioning overall. Um, the last thing I'll say is make sure that you do take time to laugh, and like even if it's just silly memes online, or stuff like that, or if you can go out to a funny movie, just try to take some time to laugh, because laughter is extremely healing even when you're going through something. And so you just need a break from the sadness sometimes. What else am I missing? um Focus on you. Focus on you. So while your heart is breaking, while this might not be what you want, while this not might not be what you ever could have imagined, understand that this is a time to turn the focus back on yourself, to help yourself get through it, to look at the things that you want in your future, even if that future is just you. Look at the things that you want. Don't move too fast with other relationships while you're grieving. Give yourself time to get to know you and to understand the things you like, the things you love, what brings you joy, what makes you happy. It's really important that you do that right now more than ever. So, what I'm talking about is self love. Take it seriously and practice it, because it'll make a difference when in how you move forward. So because you want the grief to do its work. And the work of grieving is helping you to be able to move to the next stage, which is forgiveness, whether that's forgiving the other person or just forgiving yourself. But you need to let out the emotion so that you can begin to progress. And I think I'll do, like next week, I'll probably talk about that next stage and what it looks like, because forgiveness isn't always what people think it is. It's extremely powerful. Um, but anyway, understand you will not stay in the space of grieving forever. Give it its time, let it do its work. And if you sit with it, And if you write out your feelings, and if you get the support and you get the help that you need, I believe that you'll begin to see the light at the end. You'll begin to see it, and you'll begin to know how to encourage yourself. And after a while, you'll look back and you'll see how far you've come. And so it is worth it. Don't give up. Hang in there. I get it. I understand. So if you need help walking through this process while you're healing from divorce, you can get on my calendar. I have 20-minute increments of time. It's free. You can talk to me and see if there's a way that I can help you. You can also continue to join these free lives, the free content that I have, and you can email me and DM me and ask me questions. I love helping people, and it makes my heart glad, and it is very healing. And so thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope to see you next week.